Morning.
Sir.
There's no need to be anxious, Mrs. Brown. Plain cooking is what Mr. Churchill likes. Roasts, simple steaks and soles. Oh, do remember, clear soup for him and thick for the rest of us. Yes, Horace?
Mr. Clark.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll always try to give you as much notice as I get myself.
How many for lunch today, madam?
5, maybe 6. You'll be all right with you?
It's just for the first day.
Well, there's nothing in there that...
No,
worries you.
madam, that's all right.
Take the book with you, if you like.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Churchill.
Mama, Pug has been wounded. I found her lying in the road. Look at her shoulder.
She must have been run over.
I think somebody kicked her.
Wrap her in a blanket and put her in Mr. Bracken's car. Ask Brendan if he'll drive us and ask Miss Hamden to ring the vet.
Papa will be furious.
I can
Miss
get
Hamden!
into you, can't I, Mrs.
Miss
Brown?
Hamden!
You know your way, don't you? We've been expecting you.
It was imperative I did not leave England without speaking with Mr. Churchill.
I do hope you'll stay to lunch.
Miss Hamden's not
Mary,
in her
Mary, will you take Mr. Clark into the drawing room and introduce him to Brendan?
Brendan?
Brendan Bracken is a member of Parliament and a friend of my husband's. Would you excuse me a moment?
Oh, hurry, Mama. She's bleeding to death.
I'm getting my coat.
Oh, this way. Brendan? Brendan, you're to drive us to the vet. Pug's been wounded. There's no time to lose. Oh, this is Mr. Clark, Brendan Bracken. Excuse me.
Delighted to meet you, Mr. Clark. A friend of the family, I understand. Just around to hold the coats. Foreign office rang through about you.
Brendan!
Must go. Emergency. Coming, Mary!
It'd be that letter I wrote to Lloyd George in 1915 about munitions. Can't do that. Would like to do that. Can do that. Hack and thanks. Hack and thanks. And lock these telegrams up. What are those?
The bills?
Bills. Oh, I don't understand that at all. You can pay £150 on that. £80 for electricity. See what we paid for the same quarter last year. Right.
Miss Sarah sent a note.
Tell Sawyers to run my bath. Wow.
I know you always tell me to speak out and say what I have to say, but sometimes it sticks.
Sarah. My little mule. You persevered and studied your theatrical profession for 2 years. Are you not betraying your training and dedication by marrying so soon?
I love him, Papa.
He's 18 years older than you are.
He loves me.
He's been married twice already.
I know how persuasive you can be, Papa. The only thing I am doubtful of in deciding whether to marry him is the effect it'll have on our relationship. Yours and Mamma's with me.
Although he's lived many years in the United States, he's an Austrian. You promise me one thing. Do not marry him until he's become an American citizen. If you do, and he has not changed his nationality, in 3 years' time, you will be married to the enemy, and I will not be able to protect you once you have lost this.
Thank you, Papa.
Oh. We are being led into the most terrible trouble, you know.
Your bath's ready, sir.
Thank you, Papa.
General von Brendorf, I'm glad to see you. I know at risk you must have taken to come to see me.
This may be the last time we shall meet. Mr. Churchill, is everyone in England and France asleep or blind?
Have you talked to the Prime Minister?
The mind of Mr. Baldwin seemed elsewhere.
He's getting old. Would you care for...
No, thank you. He said the German High Command had no right to exist, that the German Navy was illegal, that we have no license for an air force. Does he not know that we have been training tank officers and pilots in Russia for years? That we have been secretly building U-boats in Finland and Holland?
I've been warning the country of this by speeches in the House, articles in the press. I shall keep on warning them until one day, I hope before it is not too late, they will listen and act.
Perhaps we are a people who need an authoritarian regime. In President Hindenburg, we had a father. When he became senile, we looked for another and found this madman. In the 3 years since Hitler seized power, do you know how much has been spent on armaments? 1,500 million sterling. And how much have you spent? 1,000th of that. We know. You tell us. You have a free press, a free parliament. Do you think this is for winter maneuvers? Why do not you and the French unite and strangle this gutter rat?
How many of your high command support Hitler?
Those who do not, into the concentration camps. Those who are alive, those who see clearly, hear him speak openly of peace and prepare secretly for war. How can we make the French realize before Europe sinks again?
The French are preoccupied with enemies within. They change ministers as swiftly as menus.
And England, I know you have warned your countrymen. How is it they will not listen?
My words sink into the sand in which they bury their heads. We muddle along, hoping for peace and moving irrevocably towards war. You have brought me some news. Is there a plot to assassinate him?
If there should be, I would know of it.
Is there a plan to attack? You know that in the first chapter of Mein Kampf, Herr Hitler swears to bring the Austrian people into the fatherland. Where is the attack to be?
If it were known that I have told you, I am a dead man.
I have other sources, never fear.
The German High Command has been given orders to prepare for a military occupation of the Rhineland. The troops to be used to be little more than 1 division.
But the French have 100 divisions.
Will they fight?
Pug is going to be well, Papa. They've given her an injection and now she's feeling sorry for herself. She was badly hurt. Somebody kicked her.
Kicked her? Who dared to kick my dog? Poor, brave little pug. She must have been run over.
Winston, if you're ready, we'll go into luncheon. Mr. Clark.
Poor, brave little pug. She shall come into luncheon, too. She shall be put in a high chair and with cushions so that she can see everybody.
Who is Mr. Clark, Papa?
If you know his name, you must never mention it. He's come here at the risk of his life. Come on, Pug.
You met Hitler?
I like to study my monsters at close quarters. Besides, I admire men who stand up for their country in defeat. I happen to say to this gentleman, why is Hitler so ferocious against the Jews? I suppose he must have reported back because my tea with his for Hitler was cancelled. I don't suppose I shall meet him now.
Mr. Churchill, what do you think of the mood of the French? Will they fight?
Je ne sais pas.
Will you fight?
That is a question for the Prime Minister.
What do you think of your Stanley Baldwin?
What do I think of the Prime Minister? Once upon a time, Mr. Baldwin was wiser than he is now. He used to take my advice.
If the German Chancellor wanted to march into the Rhineland, after all, he was only walking into his own back garden. How should we feel if we'd been kept out of Yorkshire for 15 years? I told the French Foreign Minister when I saw him that if there's one chance in 100 that war would result because Herr Hitler had occupied the Rhineland, I cannot commit Great Britain.
Mr. Churchill?
In these last fluid years, French foreign ministers, and Monsieur Flandin among them, have been content to find in British pacifism an excuse for their own. What do they have to fear? The French army is the largest in the world, and pacifist to the core. As we go to and fro in this peaceful country, with its decent, ordinary people going about their business under free institutions with fair play and tolerance in their laws and customs, it is startling and fearful to realize that only a few hours away, great wheels are revolving, remorseless hammers are descending night and day in Germany. Does the House realize that the equivalent of 1,500 million pounds have been spent on armaments in the Third Reich in the last year? Submarines have been built secretly. The most warlike and, in many ways, the most efficient people in Europe are becoming welded into a tremendous fighting machine. This march into the Rhineland is but a step, a stage. If we do nothing, who will it be next? Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland? Unless we take warning and build up defenses of every kind, we ourselves may someday be the victims.
Last chapter of the book of the prophet Jeremiah.
Order! Prime Minister.
When the right honourable gentleman speaks in this debate, or other debates, the House always crowds in to hear him. It listens and admires. It laughs when he would have it laugh. It trembles when he would have it tremble. But it remains unconvinced, and in the end, it votes against him.
Neville.
Prime Minister, if at long last you have decided to set up this new ministry for the coordination of defence, who will you appoint?
I had intended offering it to Ramsay MacDonald.
Too old.
To Anthony Eden, everyone is old.
The First Lord feels there is only one man for the job, Winston Churchill. And I agree.
Surely appointing Churchill would alarm those elements in France who've regarded his exclusion from government as a pledge against militarism.
Hitler wouldn't like it either.
Well, we must get nearer to Germany.
Prime Minister, you refused the invitation to meet Hitler. How can we get nearer to Germany?
Well, I don't know. You're Foreign Secretary. That's your job. Anyway, we discussed foreign policy at the cabinet meeting.
With Mussolini using poison gas in Abyssinia and Hitler growing in strength, bringing Winston in would make the country realize that we are prepared to stand up to these people who threaten us.
I wish you wouldn't put it like that. I prefer to regard us as the only defenders of liberty left in a world of fascists and Bolsheviks.
Churchill has been so outspoken against Hitler and Mussolini. He would surely seriously embarrass your foreign policy. But the question is, could we afford to have Winston in the cabinet? No one would be allowed to say anything.
If he came in, Neville, you might have a struggle for the leadership when I retire. We will think on. Now, to important matters.
With the French supplying planes to the Madrid government and Germany and Italy supporting General Franco, are we to remain neutral?
Yes, for the time being. Now to His Majesty. When I dined with the King last week, it surprised me to see a divorced woman and an American in that sitting beside him. Now, he seems to be seeing a great deal of this woman. How serious is this, Mrs. Simpson?
I felt it wise so far to disregard any of the gossip.
I see they've appointed Inskip Minister for Defence at a salary of 5,000 per year.
It's taken them time.
Baldwin had to find a man of inferior ability to himself. That Herculean task required task.
You owe me 4 shillings and 6pence so far.
I can't afford it. Jenny, don't worry about next month's bills. I've 2 articles coming out.
Do we really need John, Arthur and William in the garden?
When we build those waterfalls, we'll need strong men to handle that Welsh granite. The contractor will need less.
My darling,
labor.
This is not the Palace of Versailles. We might even have to sell this house.
Sell Chartwell? My dear Clemmy, my publishers promised me a most generous advance in my history of the English-speaking peoples.
could drink beer for lunch instead of champagne.
Huh?
A shorter holiday in the south of France. 40 and 20 to say. No casinos. Do you know how much you spent on silk underwear last year? £80. And those.
I have it. We'll take 3 morning newspapers instead of 4. I should have followed your advice in the days of my prosperity.
That's the end of our economy discussion. Virtually all our income comes from your writing.
And the highest paid journalist in Great Britain, not even Bernard Shaw, gets more. 4 names.
He spends less.
Don't worry, Clemmy. Tomorrow I shall lay a golden egg. Beaverbrook has asked for a series of articles.
I hope your articles won't take sides on this issue. Did you see it? Sarah sent it from New York. The King is touring off the Dalmatian coast with the Duff Coopers and Mrs. Simpson. Will you speak to him privately?
If he wishes so, but the initiative must come from him.
I've had several conversations with Mr. Baldwin over the question of abdication.
Your Majesty, there must be no question of abdication.
If Baldwin resigns, and he has said that he will, could you form a government?
Sir, I did not come here at your request to dislodge the Prime Minister from Downing Street, though that would be a welcome byproduct.
Please.
Sir. No, sir, if you have asked the government to pass legislation allowing you to marry Mrs. Simpson, and if the government have refused, it is they who have to resign.
What do you advise?
Patience. This matter must not be rushed. Given time, all will be well. Retire to Windsor. Raise the drawbridge. Post your doctors at the gates. Let the dogs bay. Allow time for your battalions to march.
I cannot live without her by my side, Winston.
Sir, do not abdicate. The crown is the last shield against evils that afflict countries who have given up the idea of monarchy. Think of France. Think of Germany. Think of Spain. The hereditary King of England cannot be allowed to be at the mercy of politicians trimming their doctrines on the varying hour. Your throne is 1,000 years old. Your scepter is our memory. He had a following, but he did not choose to win over the people in power. I'm afraid I sympathize with him.
You're wrong here. He can't marry an American divorcee who's about to be divorced for the 2nd time.
Cannot marry until after the divorce is final. That will take time. After the coronation, when this has gone down the corridors of oblivion, the question of marriage could be raised again.
Consider the wider issues, what's happening outside Britain. Don't let yourself be distracted by people who are using you.
Awfully good.
This house today is a theater watched by the whole world. Let us conduct ourselves with that dignity which His Majesty is showing in this hour of trial.
I plead for time and patience.
Let no word be spoken that the utterer of that word may regret in days to come. We have, as the guardians of democracy in this little island, to see that we do our work to maintain the integrity of that democracy and of the monarchy.
Mr.
Mr. Churchill.
I plead, I pray, that time and tolerance will not be denied, that no irrevocable decision will be taken in haste, but that time and public opinion will be allowed to play their part, and that a cherished and unique personality may not be incontinently severed from the people he loved so well.
The king wishes to take the honorable course to marry the woman he loves. Why should he not? The bishops have given tongue to their ill nature, forgetting that the churches stand for charity.
Will the right honourable gentleman confine what he has to say to the question before the House?
The king has no personal access to his parliament or to his people. Between him and them stand the ministers of the crown. They have used all their influence and power to persuade him to remain silent. The public should be allowed to hear him, to hear his explanation. Why should he be prevented from doing this by a clique of power-drunk politicians? Let the ministers be careful. Let them show loyal and Christian patience, even at some political embarrassment to themselves. You won't be satisfied till you've broken him, will you?
Mr. Attlee.
Mr. Speaker, in view of the serious and important occasion, I would ask you if it would not be desirable to suspend the sitting until, say, 6 o'clock, in order that members may give it due consideration.
If it is the wish of the House, I'm prepared to suspend the sitting until 6 o'clock.
It's too late. He's decided to abrogate.
Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 6 o'clock.
Sir, you're an awful disgrace to the nation. You're a traitor, sir.
I now quit altogether public affairs, and I lay down my burden. It may be some time before I return to my native land, but I shall always follow the fortunes of the British race and empire with profound interest. And if, at any time in the future, I can be found of service to His Majesty in a private station, I shall not fail. And now, we all have a new king. I wish him and you, his people, happiness and prosperity with all my heart. God bless you all. God save the king.
Well, if you ask me, I call that a ghastly sentimental speech.
I'm sorry you think that, Randolph. Your father helped him to write it.
That is not a speech to make when you've let the side down. I mean, Papa was wrong right from the beginning. In 5 minutes on the floor of the House, he undid the work of a lifetime.
If Lloyd George had been in the country, we might have pulled it off. Alone, I was too weak.
Your father's been very upset.
Look, I'm only saying what's being heard in every corridor in the House of Commons.
I've benefited from criticism all my life. And I don't recall a time when I was ever short of it.
So, who's going to listen to you now? I mean, prior to 1932, he was as much to blame for the unpreparedness of this country as anyone. Then in 1926, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, you were for reduction of the naval estimates. Now, 10 years later, you want to increase them.
My views are subject to a harmonious process which keeps them in relation to the current turn of events.
You're a voice, silent in the wilderness.
Cry in the wilderness.
No one will ever hear you again.
You're very unkind to me.
Yes, well, if you think I'm unkind, listen to what some of your so-called friends are saying about you.
You have such a highly developed critical sense, Randolph. It's a pity you don't direct more of it upon yourself. Instead of idly entertaining yourself arguing with your father, why don't you prepare yourself for contesting your constituency? Your father's in enough trouble from Conservative Central Office without your repeated standing as an independent.
Myra!
And I assure you, your failure in that role is no consolation. He would argue with a chair.
You told me I was wrong. Scarcely anything that I believed in to be permanent and vital has lasted.
Oh, my darling, you mustn't give up. Perhaps what the people need today is not what they want, but you must rouse them. You alone can do it.
I have no authority, no press, no springboard.
Then we must create a springboard. We'll invite Beaverbrook down for the weekend.
You will watch him like lynx.
Well, in some matters he misleads you. Overrules your strong principles.
Perhaps I've made enough impression upon the world to go quietly.
If you have, and the world will decide, then you can settle down, write your books, paint your pictures.
Be sure to say good night to Randolph. Let not the sun go down upon our wrath.
Lord Beaverbrook's here, sir.
Winston! Oh, Max.
He used to say a day away from Shotwell was a day wasted.
Doubtless I shall see a great deal more of it in the future. I didn't agree with Baldwin. Now that he's gone and Chamberlain has taken over...
Chamberlain, the peacemaker. You two will never see eye to eye. But he's clever.
Bah. Indeed. Opinionated and self-confident in the highest degree. He conceives himself capable of comprehending the whole field of Europe and indeed the world. Striving for peace in the teeth of facts.
You're down just now. Mine, I've always liked Churchill down. Churchill up has the makings of a tyrant. Brendan Bracken tells me you're thinking of giving up politics.
I'm considering taking up a directorship in the city.
Winston the businessman. Will he be any good? At the moment, if you went into business making coffins, people would stop dying. If you're pressed financially.
I am deeply touched by the warm friendship of your offer, but it will not be necessary for me to avail myself of it. German intelligence thinks I'm in the pay of the Beaverbrook press as it is.
You've got nothing to worry about. You can write, and you can paint. Why don't you sell your paintings?
They're too bad to sell and too dear to give away.
Company for the Swans. Is that the goose that lays the golden eggs?
He's a friend, and I call him he answers to me. I'm the only person he will answer to. Quack, quack.
Just remember, you made most of your reputation out of office. The tide will turn. All will be well. Quack, quack.
Winston? Winston! Where is he going?
Marching on to defeats of his own making.
Where is he?
A lost cause.
After a year of the Spanish Civil War, Goering has blooded his... After a year of the Spanish Civil War, Goering has blooded his young Luftwaffe pilots. He has ascertained under combat conditions whether his men and planes are equal to the task. Oh, Clemmy, I can't stand this damn thing. It's so inanimate. Where's the Hamblin?
Typing your speech for the Army estimates debate.
Where's Mrs. Hill?
Correcting proofs of arms in the Covenant. She's still tied up. There we are.
Beaverbrook wants this by this evening.
You haven't forgotten you're going to see von Ribbentrop and must leave in 10 minutes. Why not take Miss Hamlin with you and dictate in the car? Try and not make her sick with your cigar.
Our metropolis here is the greatest target in the world. Like some kind of tremendous, fat, valuable cow tied up to attract the beasts of prey. We must take effective measures while there's time.
May I offer you whiskey and soda? I will join you. I have wanted the opportunity of a private talk. You are an important statesman in the eyes of Europe.
I'm only an ordinary member of Parliament.
Well, Mr. Churchill, you know I asked to be the ambassador to Britain, to strive for an Anglo-German alliance. The Führer is determined that your country and ours should reach a greater understanding. Your health.
Herr von Ribbentrop, you will not live to be as old as I am if you drink whiskey as strong as that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I know more about champagne, perhaps, than about whiskey.
Some of us are alarmed at what is going on in Germany. Though I agree that Mr. Chamberlain echoes your sentiments about an Anglo-German friendship.
Exactly. Yet you seem obsessed with the idea that we are building a huge army and air force to launch a European war. Your articles and speeches attacking us are damaging to what we are trying, and to what Mr. Chamberlain is trying to achieve.
Everything I write and speak is based upon fact.
And what are the facts? Germany has occupied the Rhineland, but the Rhineland is German.
You have marched into the Rhineland in defiance of the Treaty of Versailles.
Oh, Mr. Churchill, you yourself have criticized that treaty.
Because it was not a peace treaty, it was an armistice. I'm not blind to what Herr Hitler has done for Germany, nor to his achievement in keeping out communism.
You see, you know as well as I do that in the end the final enemy is communism. The Führer knows that one day England and Germany will turn together to face the menace from the east. Germany has no more territorial demands in Europe.
Then why did you spend 2,000 million marks on arms last year?
We speak in confidence.
No. Everything that is said here will be reported back to the Foreign Office.
We have an expanding population of 70 million. We need breathing space. We need living room.
Your country is mortgaged to the hilt for the building of arms. Herr Hitler must go on. He cannot go back. He must blood his hounds and show them sport, or else, like the god of old, be devoured by them.
We want no territorial gains here or here.
Nor here.
Germany does not threaten Austria. although the regime there is unpopular with the majority of its people.
Doubtless Herr Hitler will take a vote before contemplating an unsolicited solution.
If a plebiscite were taken, Austria would vote for union with the fatherland.
We in this country are somewhat skeptical of plebiscites taken by the Third Reich.
Mr. Churchill, Germany has no aggressive intentions towards Austria, therefore there's no problem here. But here, and here, Poland and the Danzig corridor, White Russia and the Ukraine. For the future life of the German Reich. We hourly fear the Bolshevik invasion from Russia. All we ask is a free hand in Eastern Europe and that Britain will not interfere. To please sit down. Then, perhaps, the return of certain German colonies in East Africa, but that's a trivial matter. Please do sit. We will repel this evil monster of communism and stand guard for the British Empire and all its greatness.
Ambassador, we hate communism as much as you do. But no British government could so disinterest itself in the fortunes of the continent as to allow Germany to dominate Central and Eastern Europe. Of that much I can assure you.
In that case, war is inevitable. The Führer is resolved. Nothing will stop him.
War is a hard school, Ambassador. But the British, when compelled to go there, prove attentive pupils. They know that in war they will suffer terrible wounds, which is why they try to remain at peace.
The Führer wishes that England and Germany shall preserve their friendship. A great responsibility lies on the shoulders of those who would spoil it.
Do you know why the nose of the British bulldog slopes backwards?
I have no idea.
So that he can breathe without letting go.
That may be so, Herr Chancellor. But 2 years ago, in the Reichstag, you said that Germany did not intend to interfere with the internal affairs of Austria, to annex Austria, or to conclude an Anschluss.
You, the Chancellor of Austria, have fortified your borders against me. Together with Czechoslovakia, you're planning to restore the Habsburg monarchy. You wish to throw 20 million men against Germany. There is fighting and shooting in the streets of Vienna. There is disorder by the workers. German blood is being shed.
There is no disorder.
Situation is out of your control.
There is no disorder except that which is created by the Austrian Nazi Party led by Seyss-Inquart.
I wish to prevent further outrages against the German population. If you do not do as I say, I shall march against Austria.
I will obtain the necessary information of the Austrian defenses on the German frontier and put a stop to them immediately.
Do you believe you can hold me up for half an hour?
Naturally, I realize you can march into Austria whether we wish it or not. But that would mean the shedding of blood. It could mean general war.
Why, do you believe anybody will hinder me? Italy, with Mussolini, I have complete understanding. England will not lift a finger for Austria. And France, 2 years ago, when I marched into the Rhineland with a handful of battalions, I risked a great deal. But now it is too late.
What is it you wish, Herr Chancellor?
Would you please excuse me, Herr Doctor?
You will sign this agreement. Terms I require from Austria. Within 3 days, I expect its execution. This is the very last chance.
Heil Hitler!
Well, that is how the Führer can be. Now you have experienced it for yourself, Herr Chancellor. But when you come again, you will have a much easier time. He is a wonderfully good man and has great vision.
These terms are open to discussion.
Please, Herr Chancellor. I'm in a hurry to return to London.
All Nazis in jail to be amnestied. Size Ingvar to be minister in charge of police and security. Am I to sign Austria's death warrant?
The Soviet government is increasingly alarmed at the developing situation in Europe. With the Nazis' conquest of Austria, we believe that Czechoslovakia is now in grave peril.
Doubtless that will be the next target. Indeed, Herr Hitler publicly and loudly menaces her with attack.
Quite so. Yesterday, the French chargé d'affaires called on the Soviet foreign minister in Moscow and asked what we would do if Germany attacked Czechoslovakia.
And his answer?
He asked what the French would do. The French have a direct obligation to Czechoslovakia. Our obligation is dependent upon the action of the French.
Why do you come to me?
You are the one person of influence who seems to clearly appreciate what is going on.
Will you kindly come to the point?
As Soviet ambassador, my powers to discuss matters of defense are somewhat limited.
I understand perfectly.
For some time, you have been suggesting a grand alliance between Britain, France, and Soviet Russia. I am instructed to investigate the possibility of staff talks between our countries.
What you say is of the utmost importance. Such an alliance would hem Germany in on three sides. Why do you not go to Mr. Chamberlain?
My dear Mr. Churchill, we do not believe he would listen. We do not seek a rebuff from your Foreign Office. You have powerful friends. Maybe you can find a way.
I'll see what I can do.
And now, if you'll excuse me, thank you for your hospitality. I would prefer to see myself out.
Soils.
My darling, the vicar's here. You told him you'd speak at his harvest festival, Fate, something not too political. Shall I tell him to come in?
Not now.
What did Mr. Maisky want?
A grand alliance between us, France, and Russia. First ray of hope in the darkening sea.
You see how influential you still are. You will put it to the government.
Chamberlain will not listen.
Why should he not?
You remember Mr. Roosevelt's offer of help? That could have been the great turning point. Yet Chamberlain, in his limited knowledge and inexperience of the European scene, chose to wave away the proffered hand stretched out across the Atlantic and leave one breathless with amazement.
Nevertheless, you will put Mr. Maisky's proposition to the government. You won't give up.
Give up? I will never give up. But what is one to do to make these fools realize what is going on?
Write to Halifax. Do it now.
Chamberlain and Halifax are going to Berchtesgaden.
I'm sure you will not mind if I come to the point of our meeting. After you occupied the Rhineland, you said that you had no further territorial demands in Europe. Yet, you marched into Austria.
But, Prime Minister, that was just a family affair. We had 7 million Germans in Austria that'd been very badly treated. Read of the riots, the bloodshed in the streets. The Führer had no alternative but to protect his subjects.
That may be. But now you wish to absorb the German people in the Sudeten part of Czechoslovakia.
The Czechs are savaging my people. I'm not prepared to wait a moment longer.
If you contemplate immediate action, I see little point in our journey to see you, Chancellor.
If you can assure me that the British government accepts that the Germans in Sudetenland have the right to determine their own future, I'm quite prepared to discuss the matter. Otherwise, the Luftwaffe and the Wehrmacht only await my word.
I can make no agreement without consultation. We could break off now and commence these consultations and meet you again, but how is the situation to be held in the meantime?
Unless the Czechs force me, I promise not to give the order to march until we meet again.
I accept your word.
Then you will report our meeting to the Mother of Parliaments.
Naturally.
You will tell them that your visit alone has saved an invasion.
I can see in your face that you are a man I can trust.
"3 months ago, in company with the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Neville Chamberlain went 3 times to see that haunted, morbid being in Germany."
Hitler.
What?
Hitler, shorter.
Oh, I see. In spite of all their efforts at peacemaking, Czechoslovakia has been partitioned. 25 German divisions are now free to threaten the Western democracies. The belief that throwing a small state to the wolves as a sop is a calamitous decision. The Prime Minister had to choose between war and shame. He chose shame, and he will get war, too. Our loyal, brave people should know the truth. We have sustained a total and unmitigated defeat without a war. For 5 years, I have watched this famous island descending the staircase which leads to a dark gulf. Herr Hitler has torn up the treaties, garrisoned the Rhineland, marched into Austria, and liberated the Germans in Czechoslovakia. Now we take a stand. Here is decision at last, taken at the worst possible moment. We made a treaty with Poland, guaranteeing her frontiers. How can we guarantee Poland except through Russia, when only 3 days ago Russia concluded a non-aggression pact with Germany? At last, Britain and France declare themselves ready to stake their lives upon the territorial integrity of Poland. Here, on the least satisfactory ground, the 2 Western democracies take a stand. Before the harvest is in, we shall be at war.
I'm speaking to you from the cabinet room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany. And now, may God bless you all and preserve the right. For it is evil things that we shall be fighting against. Brute force, bad faith, injustice, oppression, and persecution. And against these things, I am certain that the right will prevail.
That is the end of the Prime Minister's statement. Please stand by for the important government announcements, which, as the Prime Minister has said, will follow almost immediately. That is the end of the announcement.
Yes, well, I mean, there's the guilty man, and behind him the others, Halifax, Simon, Samuel Hoare.
No time to talk like that.
Chamberlain is not the man to stand up to Hitler.
It fell upon Mr. Chamberlain in one of the supreme crises of the world to be contradicted by events
to be deceived and cheated by an evil and wicked man.
And why in God's name didn't he listen to you during these past years?
Because he had hope.
Of what?
Of peace, the most noble instinct of man.
Telephone, sir.
I'll take him in bed.
What will you do, Randolph?
Oh, I shall join my regiment.
I'll join the WAF. Wonder what Diana will do.
Oh, she'll do some war work, I suppose.
We shall all be doing war work. What's that?
Oh, that's an air raid warning.
The war's only been on a few moments. Hitler's organised an air raid already. We've 15 minutes to get to the shelter.
Well, I'm not going.
You should set an example to others.
They've given me a job again. I am First Lord of the Admiralty. Randolph.
Good morning, First Lord.
Good morning. Your name?
Thompson, sir.
Thompson. Good morning. Good morning.
This way, sir.
I remember.
Welcome aboard, First Lord. You've already made your mark. The German radios say that you personally placed a bomb aboard the Athenia to create bad German-American relations.
How many losses?
112 lives, including 28 American.
Once again, we must fight for life and honor against all the might and fury of the valiant, disciplined, and ruthless German race. Once again. So be it. We must attack. We must put fire in our bellies. We must make the sound of our guns reverberate in their ears like the crack of doom. They must bleed and burn. They must be crushed into a mass of smoldering ruins. Johnson.
Thompson. Sir.
Thompson.
You file that for me, please. Copy to the War Office. Running late again. Yes, I'm afraid so, sir. File. You can tell him from me that he can't send that message to the French until the Foreign Secretary's been shown a draft. Could you tell him that, sir?
Never despair. Never give in. Never, never, never. Matters great or small, never give in. Except, of course, to convictions of honor and good sense. We'll see what we can do.
Thank you, sir.
There you go, my lads.
Thank you, First Lord.
Thompson.
Sir. The Board of Admiralty, sir.
Turned down as officers for the very reason which have gained them admission, because their fathers came from the lower deck. In their fathers' homes, they grew up to love the Navy. They will make splendid officers. Who are the uniformed, psalm-singing defeatists who wrote this report?
It emanated from the Foreign Office, sir.
It what? Emanated? We must prune such words. This report is every cliché in the world except please adjust your dress before leaving. The Foreign Office. They follow their noses regardless of what the government wishes. I don't trust them. Let them in.
Yes, sir.
This morning you were rather uncomplimentary about the Treasury, too, sir. I was wondering which you disliked the most.
The War Office.
Gentlemen?
Is there any chance of seeing
I'd come back tomorrow at 11, if I were you.
But tomorrow's Sunday.
6 days shalt thou labour, and the 7th day is the first Lord's Day, when thou dost double.
I saw Monsieur de Ladier in Paris yesterday. They're still against dropping mines in the Rhine. 5 months after the outbreak of war, they're still afraid of reprisals. They say their factories are unprotected and that their air force will not be ready to meet German retaliation until June. Let us hope that Hitler's plans are in accord with this.
The Air Ministry have similar problems. They're not allowed to drop bombs on Germany.
Good, decent, civilized people, it seems, are not allowed to strike till they themselves have been struck dead. Do not be unkind to the enemy. You might make him angry. Now, what's next?
The question of the Southern Irish ports is next on the agenda. Denial of these ports reduces the destroyer cover we can offer to Atlantic convoys. Now, it'd be a simple matter to go in and take the ports.
Illegal force is the very thing we are fighting against. I will not take this to the Cabinet under any circumstances. It is on the agenda because I wanted a report on the number of U-boats being suckered in Irish creeks. Where is that report?
A report was requested last week, First Lord.
Last week? Last week? Pray let me have it tomorrow morning, on 1 page. Now, gentlemen, the mining of Norwegian inshore waters.
Millions of tons of Swedish iron ore, vital to the German war machine, is still being carried through Norwegian territorial waters to Germany.
Quite. I've put it to the Cabinet that depriving Germany of this iron would be equivalent to a major victory in the field.
We are not given permission to lay mines.
The Foreign Office objects.
The Foreign Office. Norway and Sweden are neutral.
And so is Ireland.
Yes. But there is a difference between invading Ireland and laying mines off Norway. Germany has no qualms about violating Norwegian territorial waters.
Yes, but from a political point of
view... A political point of view has nothing to do with you, Admiral. It would be a far safer world if admirals and generals and cobblers stuck to their lasts.
Yes, First Lord. As I was saying, from a political point of view, Norway has much to lose from us by denying her bauxite. We could bring her entire industry to a standstill.
We have been discussing this operation since last September. We have had the objections of the Board of Trade, the Ministry of Supply, and the Economic Departments. Then one has to face the Chiefs of Staff and the Cabinet. When all this has been smoothed out, the French have to be consulted, and the consciences of the Dominion squared. And all the time, one knows victory will never be found by taking the line of least resistance, and that trying to wage war by committee is fatuous. Fatuous! Next. No. We shall have to mine those waters. We shall have to. I will take it to the Cabinet once again.
He hasn't eaten his breakfast.
No, and he won't get up. He's in a terrible mood.
Wow.
Wow. They blame me. They always do. They say it's because we laid mines in the inshore waters.
Hitler planned the invasion of Norway months ago. When you go down to the house, you must take no responsibility for what's happening in Norway.
I can't do that in wartime.
You cannot take the blame.
It would make a first-class political crisis. I can't do it. I shall have to be on my best behavior. Reserved, subdued, and penitent. Qualities for which I'm well known.
Oh, your name has never been linked with those who brought England to war unprepared. To expect blame through loyalty is madness. This is your opportunity.
I do not propose this afternoon to give an account of the military operations in Norway.
Why not?
Because of the large number of men to be taken off, and of the fact that it would be possible for the Germans to bring there the whole available forces of their bombers. No doubt, news of our withdrawal from southern Norway created a profound shock both in this house and in the country.
Not only in this country, but the whole world.
However, I am able once again to pay my tribute to the very remarkable skill of our naval and military forces. We have watched with pride and with admiration the splendid gallantry and dash of the men of the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, both of whom
What about those who made the decision?
both of whom have had both of whom have had continuous difficult and dangerous tasks to perform. Both of whom have performed great achievements.
Mr. Attlee.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not satisfied, despite what the Prime Minister has said, that the present War Cabinet is an efficient instrument for conducting the war. I say there is widespread feeling in the country, not that we shall lose the war, but that to win it, we want different men at the helm than those who have led us into it.
Mr. Lloyd George.
I intervene, Mr. Speaker, only to say that I do not think the First Lord was entirely responsible for all the things that have happened in Norway.
I take full responsibility for anything done by the Admiralty and my full share of the burden.
The right honourable gentleman must not allow himself to be converted into an air raid shelter to keep the splinters from hitting his colleagues. The Prime Minister has met this formidable foe of ours in peace and war, and he has always been worsted. The worst thing the Prime Minister did was to meet Hitler and let him see him. Hitler knew then that he would never be a man who would wage war. In the beginning of his speech, he appealed for sacrifice. The nation is prepared for sacrifice. I say solemnly that the Prime Minister should give an example, because there is nothing which can contribute more to victory in this war than he should sacrifice the seals of office.
Mr. Leo Amory.
Mr. Speaker, I quote certain words of Oliver Cromwell. He said to the Long Parliament, when he thought it was no longer fit to govern the affairs of the nation, "You have sat too long for any good you have been doing. Depart, I say, and let us have done with you. Go! In the name of God, go!"
I felt as if I were walking with destiny, and that all my past life had been but a preparation for this hour and for this trial.
Churchill, sir.
Your Majesty.
Good evening, Mr. Churchill. Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
The news is grave.
Holland and Belgium have been attacked. An avalanche of fire and steel has swept across their frontiers. In a matter of hours, the Germans will be in France.
I expect you don't know why I've sent for you.
Sir, I couldn't possibly imagine why.
I want you to form a government.
Your Majesty, I will form the strongest possible government that will stand by our country in its hour of peril.
In the event of an invasion of England, Mr. Churchill, my family and I would prefer to remain here. In such circumstances, I might come near departing from my usual constitutional rectitude and disregard the advice of my Prime Minister.
Sir, in the event of an invasion, I will take a rifle to the sentry box at the end of Downing Street and shoot it out until there's no more ammunition.
I do not forget that you have always been a good friend to my family. May God strengthen your arm. I know your burden.
Your Majesty's loyal and devoted servant.
Tomorrow night we'll be in Downing Street. These the shoes you're going to wear tomorrow? Aren't they a bit shabby?
Well, they're comfortable. I'm old enough to let that count. I don't suppose we shall see Chartwell for a while.
This war's going to take it out of us. You're 65. I'm no longer young. Wonder if there's ever been a time when our future depended on the courage of one man. Good night.
Good night. The Germans have struck their long-awaited blow. Now at last the slowly gathering, long pent-up fury of the storm has broken upon us. What can I do about this mighty battle? We are losing everywhere, at sea, on land, and in the air. In my mind's eye, I see the figure of death. Come for us. What shall we do? It's not enough to go round. Pray God, they're not too late.
Prime Minister.
I speak to you as Prime Minister for the first time in a solemn hour for the life of our country, of our empire, of our allies, and above all, of the cause of freedom. A tremendous battle is raging in France. The Germans, by a remarkable combination of air bombing and heavily armored tanks, have penetrated the French defenses and are ravaging the open country. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. I will say to the House, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. You will ask, what is our policy? I will say, it is to wage war. By sea, by land, by air. To wage war with all our strength and all the might that God can give us. To wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the whole dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You will ask, what is our aim? I will answer in one word. Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory despite all terror. Victory however long or hard the road may be. For without victory there can be no survival. We are resolved to destroy Hitler and every vestige of the Nazi regime. From that, nothing can turn us. Nothing. We will not parley, we will not negotiate with Hitler and the grisly gang that works his wicked will. We will fight him by sea, we will fight him by land, we will fight him in the air, until, with God's help, we have rid the world of his shadow.
'Cause I've been living inside of you. But I guess this time I set me free. And there's nothing that you can do. I hope you can see.
I can't seem to keep people around me. Cause I'm scared that they might know the truth all about me. Then they might doubt me. There's no other route. I wanted to shout, but it's too late now cause I'm drowning. Got two-faced like I'm a clown, man. Life is too great, no, it's astounding. I'm in good shape, ma, but you know that I'm drowning. Like a cup in a cage. I can't cope with this hopelessness. Though I try to be open and go with it, but I'm soaking in the pain like the wind never stop flowing in. As I'm floating in a glowing river through a golden gate, trying to motivate. Yeah, I do my fucking best, but there's two voices in my head, I just can't. I just fucking can't.
Cause I've been living inside of you. But I guess this time I set me free. And there's nothing that you can do. I hope you can see me. Cause I've been living inside of you. But I guess this time I set me free. And there's nothing that you can do. I hope you can see.
Baby, what you wanting like this? You be fine, trust me just in time to get along. No, leave me alone. Why yes, can you see that you are alone, big? We're now sitting in our own throne, big. We need nobody, can you see it through? But it's not you who I should be listening to. Guess what, big? Nobody fucking needed you. No, ain't nobody fucking needed me. Yeah, they never needed us. They were the nail Jesus up. There's no fucking happen that they don't believe in us. But they my friend, I'm the only one that you can trust. Yeah, god damn it, you an idiot. Go online, be a slave for the media. And you forgot what your father said. Are you serious? Look at yourself, big. You fucking idiots.
Cause I've been living inside of you. But I guess this time I set me free.
Oh, I love this. I love
this. There's nothing that you can do.
But the guy is always, I see.
I know you can see.
Can you see me, baby? There's no one else.
Cause I've been living inside of you.
You have to accept it.
But I guess this time I set me free. And there's nothing that you can do.